Okay, guys. Okay, here we go. We're reconvening, finishing strong. So we'll let everyone finish coming in. Take your seats. We've got an incredible session coming up. So if we can all grab a seat, grab a friend. Here we go, and we'll have that up at the back, please, as well. Yep. We'll have that at the back. Here we go. It's going to be lifted off in 15 seconds. Taking a seat. Okay, are we feeling good? Are we going to do it? Okay. That's good. That size is fine as it is. That's great. It's all great. Okay, welcome back, guys. So far, as you know, it has been a crazy day. Everybody is feeling it, but we are surviving. We're here together, and my goal is to help us all to finish strong. As you know, today on so many levels has been powerful. It's been a day full of vision and full of much determination. We've had world leaders, CEOs, philanthropists, all here to see action, to take action, make decisions, get it done. Together, setting out some bold, visionary, green solutions that can truly change the future of all of our planet. And we are all aligned. We want one thing, which is a place where nature can thrive. I'd like to introduce you now to a great man, a great friend. He's a great guy in the world of sustainability and philanthropy. He's the special representative for business and philanthropy. He's the CEO of Crescent Enterprises, and he's the chair of COP28, Business and Philanthropy Climate Forum. So please give a warm welcome to the one and only Badr Jaffer.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Good evening and welcome to this timely session on Synergizing, Business and Philanthropy, a new paradigm for climate and nature action. Before we begin, it's worth taking a moment to acknowledge the significance of where this discussion is taking place. Right here in the heart of the UN's Blue Zone at COP28. COP28's tireless President Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber has made no secret of his ambition to make this the most inclusive and consequential COP ever. Much of that effort is rightly focused on elevating the voices of historically underrepresented communities. It has also transformed the manner in which COP28 engages with the private sector. A powerful case in point is, of course, the COP28 Business and Philanthropy Climate Forum taking place 300 meters away as part of the World Climate Action Summit. The fact that we are here tonight sends a clear message that business and philanthropy must be fully engaged in the global effort to keep 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach and in a way that leaves no one behind. And it's not just because we believe it's the right thing to do. It's also because the long-term business case for sustainability has become overwhelming. So you better get used to us because we're here to stay. One of the other key priorities that our COP28 president has consistently emphasized is the need to move from pledges to action. And that is what I'm most excited about. Over the course of the Business and Philanthropy Climate Forum, we are rolling out over 20 tangible initiatives designed to harness the strengths of the private sector to advance our climate and nature goals. These include numerous large-scale programs to accelerate a just transition of industries with a focus on confronting major climate finance disparities for the Global South. The importance and urgency of this focus cannot be overstated. Home to 75% of the global population, the Global South is not just on the front lines of climate change, it's also on the leading edge of global growth and development. By the middle of the century, global population is expected to reach 10 billion people, with the vast majority of additional middle class likely to be from Asia and Africa. 6 of the 7 largest economies of the world are going to be in so-called emerging economies led by China and India. And that's why it's so significant that almost half of the 1,300 CEOs taking part in the Business and Philanthropy Climate Forum are from the great nations across the Global South. I'm tempted to go into some more detail about some of the forum's initiatives, but I, of course, don't want to steal anyone's thunder. So if I must just leave you with one final thought, I'd like it to be this. The overwhelming message that we are hearing loud and clear is that the international private sector is ready to engage and act. And we acknowledge that we need to do a much better job of harnessing this energy and capacity for innovation, along with capital, towards targeted and scalable action. And just as we can no longer decouple the human development agenda from the climate and nature agenda, we can no longer keep governments, businesses, and philanthropists operating in isolation from one another. Combining our respective strengths, we create a multiplier effect that will produce outcomes on a scale and time frame that no individual stakeholder can achieve alone. And by doing this, I wholeheartedly believe that business and philanthropy can become the connective tissue that provides consistency in delivery between COP presidencies. So thank you again to all of you for being with us here tonight, and I greatly look forward to the rest of the discussion and some very exciting announcements. Thank you again.
Okay, so now is the time to join me to welcome onto stage some visionaries from across the world. We've got Brian Moynihan, the Chair and CEO of the Bank of America. If you come on up, here we go. We've got Hannah Al-Rostamani, who's Group CEO of First Abu Dhabi Bank. We've got Ruth Porat, President and CIO at Alphabet. Tony Elumelu, founder of the Tony Elumelu Foundation. Lauren Powell-Jobs, founder and president of Emerson Collective, and of course our moderator, Borghi Brende, president of the World Economic Forum.
So, I was supposed to say good afternoon, but in my script, but excellencies and ladies and gentlemen and friends, it's good evening. But with such a powerful panel, I'm sure we will create the necessary momentum before our dinners. So we probably will miss the cocktails, but we are here for a very important discussion. And thank you, Badr Jafar, for your leadership, also introducing business and philanthropy. One of the paradoxes is that philanthropy today only allocates 3% of its funding to environment and climate. And I think the representatives here are in the category of wanting to change that. And I will also say that these 2 days have been very consequential. Yesterday, the loss and damage fund was established, but there was also money in the fund, because a fund without money really doesn't matter. So congratulations to the Emirates for that. And secondly, we also know today that there are 30 billion that is not only pledged, but is money on the table from the President of His Highness of the UAE. So we're off to a good start, and we're walking the talk. This panel, I know, is not going to focus on why, because that we know cannot continue like we're doing today, but it's about how. And the World Economic Forum, in our cooperation also with Badr Jafar on the Gaia project, is also willing to do our part. So let me start with you, Brian Monahan, CEO and chair of one of the most important banks in the world, I think like 3 trillion or something that you have at your hand. How do you see the role of the financial institutions to really walk the talk and make sure that we can finance the change towards a net zero?
So thank you, Morgan. I think you have to think of this really in two broad strokes. For the developed world, for the traditional financing, those transactions go through and the banks are following their clients, and so their clients are driving it. So, you know, the SMI group that I chair has a bunch of financial institutions. They have $9 trillion committed net zero. They've already done $2.5 trillion. And at our company, we have $1.5 trillion to the SDGs, $1 trillion to the environment. We've already done $500 billion to the SDGs and $300 billion to the environment so far. And it was supposed to be 10 years, and we've done that much in 3. The problem is when you move the other side of the equation, and that's where you get to what's harder to finance. So if you think about in the developing world, we just completed a deal that was started at COP26 to do an exchange for Gabon for their debt with a guarantee of an international finance agency so they could take the savings and protect the coastline. That was a 2-year deal. It was $500 million, and it took that long. And that's the difference. So we got to figure out how to motivate capital to the developing country at the same pace you're seeing it motivated to the developed world. And that's the trick, and that's what we're talking about. And philanthropic dollars can play a big role in that, as some of these catalytic funds can.
Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you for your leadership. We heard you yesterday also with this great speech related to the sustainable market. You work very closely with King Charles on this. Moving from one financial institution to another, Hannah Al-Rustamani, CEO of First Abu Dhabi Bank. You heard also Brian, and you also heard the president of the UAE yesterday with the $30 billion contribution from this country. And I know your bank has also been at the forefront under your leadership on sustainability.
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about our journey, which started in 2010. It was our first initial green energy project facilitation. And then in 2017, we have seen an uptick in the region in terms of interest on green financing. And we were the first MENA bank to issue a green bond. But I think the strongest step and commitment that we have taken was in 2021, where we have joined the United Nations Net Zero Banking Alliance. This is where we came together, put our plans and the framework in terms of what do we really want to commit in terms of sustainability and green energy. And with that, the commitment came that we want to facilitate $75 billion by 2030. Now, so far, which is not long ago, today we have facilitated $27 billion, which is about, 1/3 of our commitment. And that shows you really the acceleration and interest in the region in terms of driving renewable energy and sustainability financing. And 50% of that is in UAE, 50% of that within the region. And we will see as we move forward, there will be much more projects that will come up within the region that will require, funding in renewable energy in different sectors. Within our United Nations, commitment, we have said that we're going to focus on 3 sectors: aviation, oil and gas, and power generation. And we've been really working with the different sector providers, different institutions in terms of how we can support them in that funding journey. So we're quite, with the announcement, as you mentioned, in COP28 happening in the region, I think there will be a much more acceleration in terms of the projects that are going to come up and the commitments.
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you for your leadership. As maybe some of you have also noticed, this panel is doing a lot better on gender equality now, since two men already pulled out. So the women stayed on the panel, so very happy about that. That's the way to go. So Ruth Porat, President and Chief Investment Officer and CFO of Alphabet and Google. I know, Ruth, that you for many years have cared a lot about the environment and climate, very passionate about it. And under your leadership, Google also has played an important role here, also through its philanthropy. And now we have big hopes also for the new technologies. Is AI really going to help us in this area, and how is Google going to support the net zero?
Well, thank you for the question. Not only is AI going to help us, but I think if there's one message I want to leave with everyone here today, is each of us has the opportunity to apply AI to our operations and issues today. And what's extraordinary for me at Google is when I hear from engineers who've been at Google since inception, they say this is the most exciting time in computer science in their lifetime, which is a big statement given the last 25 years were pretty effective as well. But it's important because AI is enabling us to address some of the biggest issues on the planet. The opportunity to address healthcare and ensure that we can extend quality healthcare to everywhere around the globe, or to democratize education, or to address climate change. And very much to your point, back in 2020 at Google, we set a goal to run 100% of our data centers and offices on carbon-free energy 24/7 by 2030, never emitting carbon. And we, at the time, had a line of sight to get much of the way there, but knew that we would need new technologies and solutions to close that gap. And that's what we're seeing today. And I think, again, what's important is that we're seeing it across areas. So for all of you who run cities, states, we have the opportunity through tools to help you reduce carbon emissions. We have a solution that's called the Environment Insights Explorer. We've taken Google's mapping of the globe, combined it with AI, and you can look at the carbon footprint in over 4,000 cities. We've then introduced something called Project Greenlight, where we are optimizing traffic lights and traffic flows. And the issue on traffic is when you're free-flowing, you have a reduction in carbon emissions by about 30-fold relative to stalling at stoplights. So this is available today. If you're running a logistics company, we're using AI with a number of companies around the globe to optimize their routes, saving money and reducing carbon footprint and use of oil. To your point about philanthropies, through google.org, we're not only committing capital, but also the talent of our engineers, and working with organizations like Wadhwani AI, which is looking at how to use AI to deal with crop infestation, again, increasing the yield. Or we're working with Rainforest Connection, which is looking at illegal logging and the acoustics that come from that as a way to address problems. So the main message is these solutions are here today. They're going to continue to grow. We worked with BCG and estimate that 5 to 10% of carbon emissions can be eliminated through AI solutions by 2030. So we're very excited about it. We're excited to work with the public sector, private sector, and philanthropic organizations today, and to continue to build on this as we go forward.
Thank you, Ruth. I think it deserves an applause. I was talking about walking the talk, and in philanthropy, I think you, Lorraine Powell-Jobs, founder and president of Emerson Collective, has really been willing and able to walk the talk. And you are very passionate about climate and environment, and I know that also through some of your investments, through the philanthropy, you have supported innovators and entrepreneurs in this field. Could you share a little bit about your thinking and your plans?
Yeah, sure, of course. At Emerson Collective, we have the good fortune to be able to both invest in for-profit companies and invest or give grants to nonprofit organizations depending on the power of the idea and the power of the team behind it. So we're big believers in entrepreneurs moving things forward, changing the world, and we find them in the social sector and in the for-profit sector equally. About 7 years ago, we started working with an organization called the Elemental Accelerator. And they take nonprofit dollars and they invest in early startup companies that have a brilliant idea. They de-risk the technology through projects, and then they go into the market to attract for-profit capital and equity investments. And since then, over the last 7 years, we've had 150 companies through the accelerator, and they've attracted over $8 billion in follow-on capital. And it's a very good way to have a hybrid nonprofit for-profit model. As we started getting more and more invested in climate, we then established a foundation, and this is something that I want to encourage all philanthropists. If you have a climate-focused foundation, make it a spend-down foundation. Because if it's focused right now over this next decade, which is a consequential decade, there's no reason to only allow a 5% payout. So we established a few years ago a 10-year spend-down foundation of $3.5 billion that we are deploying in the field now, because this is when those dollars are most highly leveraged. So I want to encourage everyone to think about that. Thanks. And then furthermore, there are so many incredible ideas and companies at Emerson. In our for-profit portfolio, we have over 50 climate-focused companies. A lot of the entrepreneurs come out of great universities and great scientific research institutes, but there are new chemical companies, new biologics, the CRISPR technology is making microbes. We see people who are drilling engineers who are now moving into geothermal and alternative energy companies. There's so much great force of mind share and intellect and personality that's going behind these companies. And so anyone also in the private sector, it's not hard to find people who are dedicating their lives to this.
Thank you. Makes me also optimistic to see that there are technology breakthroughs there that are possible in the years to come. We still have, according to what we're seeing here, 5 minutes left of our panel. So with this awesome panel, I think it would be a mistake to close it now, but we do also have to stick to the 5 minutes. I was thinking then, what should be the question that each of the panelists should answer? Maybe it should be related to this, is the glass half empty or half full? Because listening to you, I got a bit more optimistic that things can happen. On the half full, we know that, for example, price of solar has fallen to 1/10 in 10 years. The price of wind has fallen to 1/7. So that's on the optimistic side. But I just released, unfortunately this morning, the World Economic Forum new statistics showing that this year, CO2 emissions are increasing globally with 1.5%, and they were supposed to go down with 7%. So that's the half empty piece. So, starting with you, Brian, are you a half empty or a half full guy?
I'm a half full. I'm half. Can you hear me?
We still have 4 minutes, so turn on.
I'm half full, and the reason why is, if you think of what Lorraine said, you think of what Ruth said, you think of what the money that we can bring. There's just so much going on in the operating companies around the world. There's so much going on in the universities around the world. Later next week, we're going to have a bunch of universities come and showcase their research to capital, to commercialization. The amount of catalyst activity that's gone on is moving this thing very fast, and it's hard to calculate that. And that's what I think. So this isn't discrediting any models that say we're off course or on course. Nothing taking account what happens when 3 years ago or 4 years ago, 4 COPs ago, The private sector wasn't there. 4 COPs later, we're here with 1,000 CEOs and philanthropists trying to say, how do we move this faster? That provides a lot of capital, those ideas.
It's really striking. Hannah, half full or half empty?
Well, we have to be optimistic, and I think, we've got to make sure we unite, partnerships, taking action. We can still sit and debate and say we didn't achieve yet and, we need to do a lot more. But I think, you see a lot of positivity in terms of the engagement, in terms of commitments, in terms of drive and initiatives. There's definitely more forums where we discuss, actions and initiatives. So I think we're on the right path. Now, we still can do more and more. And I think, as the slogan of the COP28 is, we need to unite and act. That's what's really important.
Thank you, Hannah. Ruth?
I'm both. And the reason I say that is we have the capital, we have the technology solutions, and what we really need to have is the persistent sense of urgency. We need to be impatient, we need to be frustrated, we need to be angry, we need to move the people who are not in this room. So it's in our control, we can deliver it, and we need to do so.
Lauren?
I don't think anyone's going to defend pessimism, so I'll tell you what makes me optimistic. Number one, the policy that passed in the United States, the Inflation Reduction Act, which unleashed over $350 billion, the multiplier effect is going to be between 5 and 7x, and we're seeing a significant portion of that being directed to local communities and satisfying what's called the Justice 40 provision, which mandates that 40% of all the dollars actually have to be spent with communities, solving the issues that are hitting frontline communities with the communities at the table. That gives me a lot of hope. The wisdom that resides in communities is much better and dwarfs the wisdom of anyone that is going to stand here on this stage. And so the fact that we're trying to link arms and solve this issue together gives me a lot of hope.
Great. It's a great line to end on. Not only was this a great panel, substance-wise, they were also sticking to the time. We still have 30 seconds left. But even more important, contrary to many panels, I think most of us wanted them to continue to speak. And that's not always with panels. We still wanted to spend 10, 15 minutes together. No chance for that today, but a big thank you to the panel. I think we all left a little bit with more optimism, a bit of realism, and a lot of very big responsibilities for all of us to know not only walk the talk, but also really be action-oriented. Thank you.
Well done, guys. Well done. Smashed it. Smashed it. Well done, everyone. Well done. So next up is a technologist, a true business leader, and a true philanthropist. In 1975, this gentleman co-founded Microsoft with his childhood friend, Paul Allen. And today he is co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill is the founder of Breakthrough Energy, an effort to commercialize clean energy and other climate-related technologies. He's also co-founder of TerraPower, a company investing in and developing groundbreaking nuclear technologies. Join me to give the warmest of welcomes to the extraordinary Bill Gates.
Good evening. Thank you, Bear. That was very generous. Well, it was 8 years ago in 2015 in Paris when many of the people here witnessed the commitments for every country to do their part in solving climate change. The picture here was the Mission Innovation event, where for the first time there were commitments made that we would increase R&D budgets and use innovation to solve this problem. So there were three messages that came out in 2015. The immediacy and the importance of the climate crisis. Secondly, the need for innovation, not just at the lab level, but to scale out those innovations in the real world and get them to be extremely low cost. And finally, the need for the public and private sectors, both large and small, to come together to fulfill these commitments. And standing here 8 years later, I'm excited to say that this has led to some really exciting results. To see proof, I encourage you to walk around the Innovation Hub. Almost all of those companies didn't exist 8 years ago. A level of financing and intelligence and deep thinking has been brought to all of these mission problems. Some of those companies are supported by Breakthrough Energy, the company I committed to start in return for the commitments that the government's made there, saying that whatever good ideas came out of the laboratory, we would have risk-oriented capital with the right time frame to support those projects. A lot of others are supporting innovative companies and doing incredible work, so we have a whole ecosystem of innovation. When we think about emissions, I think it's always important to go back and think about each of these five sectors. You know, some of them get a lot of attention, electricity and transport, but the other three less so. To meet a goal of zero, you have to succeed in every single one of these sectors. And in fact, the industrial sector's probably been the one that's the most challenging. The good news is that we see incredible innovation progress in every one of these areas. In manufacturing, we are well on the way to making steel with either electricity or hydrogen instead of coal. Buildings are getting greener, partly thanks to a company that's developed a window that's many times more efficient than what's been used in the past. In transportation, we're taking great leaps forward. For example, we had a car that went over 600 miles on a single charge using an innovative new battery. In agriculture, we have a company that's using microbes to provide fertilizer, which avoids almost all of the greenhouse gas emissions. Earlier this year, I had a chance to visit Wyoming, Kemmerer, Wyoming, where there'll be a fourth-generation nuclear plant built by TerraPower. And the whole reason I'm involved in that is the possibility that that can scale up and make a meaningful contribution to baseload electricity. So a lot of progress in all these different areas. Of course, just getting things to work at the lab level is probably the easiest part. We won't be able to drive this without a lot of key elements. For example, connecting all this energy to the grid. For example, doing modeling to understand what it takes to keep the high reliability. We need new things. Carbon capture is still very expensive. Clean hydrogen also very expensive, and so we need to advance. And in each cases, there are many companies and many different approaches that will compete to see which is the most effective. We need all these sectors, philanthropy, governments, and business, to make big bets. And it was, great to hear from the panel how each of those companies is playing their part. Since Paris, I've put over $2 billion into clean energy, and that's a number I expect will double in the coming years. But we need a lot more, particularly in those pilot plants, that early stage. When you get to late stages, okay, the economic case, the classic infrastructure industry works, but the pilot plants where there's a lot of uncertainty, that is a key area. The goal has got to be to reduce the cost difference between the things that emit and the things that don't. A difference that I term the green premium. The only way we can get the broad adoption is by driving these technologies to a level of maturity where that green premium is either very, very small, zero, or even in some cases negative, where the innovation actually takes you to a lower cost path, and we're seeing a number of those. I believe we really can prevent a climate disaster and achieve zero emissions. Now, as we do that, there's two things we should keep in mind. First, we need, for the sake of justice, to help people adjust to the planet that is already warmer. And there's a lot of warming built in. The leg in this system means that, the first cooler day is many decades from now. Our priority in this adaptation work should be those who are most effective. And the majority of those people are farmers in both sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And we can already see the crop loss that they're suffering and what that means to them. So they need support to have higher productivity and more resilience, both in crops and in livestock. I had a great opportunity earlier today during the Food Systems Summit, which was great to have that as part of this meeting, to announce with the UAE a $200 million partnership to fund food innovation. This includes arming farmers not only with better seeds, but also weather information, advice, really helping them with the very best practices. And of course, the agriculture sector is also a source of emissions. And so the new approaches will allow them to eliminate a substantial amount of emissions at the same time as they're pursuing their food output. We have over 160 new crop varieties coming out of the CG system. And farmers, for example, in Zimbabwe, who are using these new varieties of maize, were able to generate 9 months of extra food for their family. And so, several years of productivity can give you the resilience that they deserve. The organization that's at the heart of this is the CGIAR, the CG system, which it's great that it's being highlighted here because it needs more backing to drive that R&D. And our foundation is proud to be, at this point, their largest partner. Companies have to meet the commitments they made 2 years ago in Glasgow to double the amount for adaptation. And a big part of that should be helping to achieve the CG system goal of raising $4 billion. That is the best buy in the world of climate adaptation. The second factor that we have to keep in mind is the cold hard truth that the world has quite limited resources available to reduce inequities. I believe we should devote more to helping the poorest countries, but any realistic level will force us to make tough choices about which areas get the world's attention. Just shifting from one area to the other is not enough. So climate change is a major threat to human welfare, but so are food insecurity, malnutrition, and infectious disease. And each of these is very connected to the other. For example, extreme weather is making it harder to grow crops in many parts of the world, which puts more children at risk of malnutrition and makes them more vulnerable to disease. In a world with limited resources, it may seem like we cannot make progress on climate, health, and development all at once. But nobody will be better off in a world with fewer carbon emissions if we're not solving illness, starvation, and death. So we have to make the right trade-offs to make progress on all of these at the same time. And that's where innovation comes in. By focusing it in the right way, it magnifies the impact of the resources in every one of these areas. Just as we need to innovate to get to zero emissions, we need to continue to innovate in human health. Consider the progress we've had in reducing childhood deaths. In the year 1990, 12 million children under the age of 5 died, overwhelmingly from infectious disease. By 2000, that number had dropped below 10 million, but by 2019, it was under 5 million. How do we do it? Well, a key element was applying resources against innovation and low-cost vaccines. Scientists found a way to make better vaccines and enable them to get out to almost all the world's children, including for things like rotavirus. And the world did a great job financing the purchase of those vaccines for children in low and middle income countries, and that's made a huge difference. Even a disease like cholera that we see more of because of climate change, because of these vaccines, we can limit the negative impact that has. So I'm optimistic that we can cut childhood deaths in half again, down to 2.5 million, by maintaining the high-impact health investments. And we can do that while funding climate mitigation and adaptation. Every discussion about these scarce resources should begin with the question, how can this money save and improve the most lives, now and in the future? With this question as our guide in the decades ahead, I believe we can improve human welfare broadly faster than any of us have seen in our lifetime, including avoiding a climate disaster. The work we have gathered here we're gathered here to discuss will play a huge part in getting us there. And I'm inspired by the commitments being made here. By investing in innovation that works for everyone, we won't just keep the planet livable, we will make it a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Incredible vision, incredible goals. It's my great pleasure now to introduce the next panel for some dynamic views on blended finance. Now, you don't often hear those words all put together. So there we go. We got the blended finance. Here we go. This is a long-term collective from philanthropies, from development finance institutions, from private and public sector, all poised to unlock a staggering $20 billion, propelling us forward towards that positive climate transition. So I'd like to welcome on stage, first of all, Ms. Mafalda Duarte from the Executive Director of the Green Climate Fund. We got Mr. Mark Galogli, co-founder of Three Cairns Group. Mr. Tobias Pross, CEO of the Alliance Global Investors. And Mr. Ravni Menon, Managing Director of the Monetary Authority of Singapore. So please give them a warm welcome to stage.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. So I've been asked to set the context for some very interesting announcements to be made by my fellow panelists just after this. Why are we here to discuss blended finance? Fact is, the world is not investing anywhere near what is required to get to net zero by 2050. There are many estimates out there. If you take one by McKinsey, net zero in 2050 will require about $9.2 trillion of investments each year. But today, only about $5.7 trillion is being invested. This is more than 35% short of the annual investment required. Many reasons why the capital is not flowing to where it is needed, to green and transition projects: insufficient capacity, insufficient expertise to prepare and develop the projects to a stage that is bankable. There's a high level of regulatory and political risks, especially in emerging economies. Transactions may face long lead times to start construction, if at all. In short, the risks to the projects are too high relative to the expected returns, and that's why private capital is not flowing. So to mobilize the necessary capital, we need to harness and synergize 3 Ps: the public sector, the private sector, and the philanthropic sector. The public sector can play a role in reducing risk and improving project bankability. Governments can provide clearer policies and greater regulatory certainty. Multilateral development banks can provide technical assistance, capacity building, and risk-sharing solutions. Development financial institutions can provide concessional capital through limited guarantees and other financing at below-market rates. And this can help to crowd in private capital. That's the first P, public capital. The philanthropic sector, second P, can provide concessional capital to help absorb some of this project risk, primarily through grants that are tied to sustainability outcomes or clear climate action outcomes. Then the third P can come in. The private sector can provide the bulk of the necessary financing for climate action. And there is enough capital. The private sector, including global banks, institutional investors, and asset managers, hold about $422 trillion in assets under management. We only need slightly more than 2% of these assets to meet the annual climate-related investment needs. So by bringing the 3 Ps together, we can solve and we can bring the necessary capital that's needed to bring us to net zero. So my fellow speakers here, in their own ways, are putting together partnerships and financing solutions to help close the funding gap for the net zero transition. So to kick things off, let me invite my fellow speaker, Ms. Mafalda Duarte, to share some exciting announcements, especially about the good work that the Green Climate Fund is doing. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. So first of all, sincere apologies. I'm not Mafalda, but I'm speaking on behalf of Mafalda Duarte. She's sending her sincere apologies because she was diligently here on time and was really keen to join but had to leave because of another important event. I'm Oyun Sanjasur and I'm External Affairs Director of the Green Climate Fund. Because we're supposed to go straight into announcements and concrete action, I'll just say one paragraph as an introduction, that financing climate-responsive investments in developing world and its private sector is a crucial investment in humanity's shared future. Developing economies represent 60% of the world's GDP growth, and are on track to run on 70% of the world's energy supply. That's where the Green Climate Fund comes in. We work with our partners to invest in developing countries. We have the largest pool of flexible, patient, risk-sharing public capital to put to work and incentivize private companies to enter new markets and new sectors in developing countries. It's my pleasure to outline 4 new key initiatives. First, we're thrilled to announce that we're teaming up with MUFG to set up a green guarantee company, the world's first ever global financial institution providing guarantees for climate bonds in developing countries. We're committing $40 million in seed funding, which is expected to draw an additional $60 million from partners who share our commitment to reduce risk and remove barriers to structural change. And they include UK FCDO, Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, USAID, and Norfund. Second initiative, our board just approved an equity commitment of over $150 million to Gaia, the very first blended finance platform designed to drive institutional capital toward long-term loans for subnational borrowers in developing countries. This includes 19 of the most climate-vulnerable countries. So, working together with MUFG, we expect to crowd in further $1.3 billion in co-finance, the majority of which comes from commercial capital. Just as exciting, 70% of that finance will support adaptation projects, which of course is commendable, private sector adaptation of vulnerable countries, and 25% will be allocated to LDCs and seeds. Third initiative, we're proud to contribute $65 million to an effort led by Impact Invest Acumen to accelerate just, inclusive energy transition in sub-Saharan Africa's poorest regions, often neglected by traditional investors. We're blending debt, equity, grants, technical assistance to create and open up markets in new regions, providing clean energy for an estimated 60+ million people across 16 countries, including Somalia. Taken together, these efforts could generate nearly $700 million in additional capital for these initiatives. And the fourth, we're contributing $180 million at the Green Fund to promote sustainable agriculture in 11 countries, which will leverage about $800 million in additional capital. So I'll stop here, but the public and private sectors must work as one because lasting impact is collective impact. We all have our role to play for the better future. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mark Galogly. I want to thank you all for staying here and being so enthusiastic about tonight. You know, we're going to announce just a brief announcement for something called Allied Climate Partners. First, let me say that my wife and I started the Three Karens group. We had one goal. The goal is to identify where is there a problem in climate finance, one that's in the developing market that we can focus on. Currently, we focus on 3, around talent, around carbon markets, and around money, around finance. Allied Climate Partners is essentially an $800 million series of funds, approximately $200 million per region. India, Africa, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean, and Central America. If you think about $200 million and say, what's 25% of that? That's the amount of junior capital or first loss capital. That comes from wealthy people. That's first loss capital. They can lose their money first. What happens if the fund is really successful? Well, they share in the upside and then recycle their capital and do it again. The 75% of that capital that's not from philanthropic capital is from great partners like the people on this stage. We've listed a number of the partners on this. There are 3 partners who didn't make the cut for showing up on the slide, but they're there for us. One is FMO. You'll see FMO's name in all of these presentations. They're like a triple header. They're doing it in many, many innovative financings. The DFC from the United States and the IDB are also partners of ours. There are a number of philanthropists that are listed here. I'm not, in the interest of time, going to go through every one. I'll just mention that Nat and Laura Simons, who run a foundation in San Francisco, have been instrumental in the creation of Allied Climate Partners. It was their idea to invest initially in something called the Southeast Asian Clean Energy Fund, which we then saw as a really successful but small fund, and we're trying to take that fund and scale it. The good news is that's succeeded. So next month we'll close on the Southeast Asian Clean Energy Fund 2, which is managed by Climb Capital. That'll be a $175 million fund having the features that I just described. 25% junior capital, 75% senior capital. So where does the rest of the money come from? It comes from government and the private sector. And what's our vision for this money? What are we going to do with it? We're going to invest in local investment managers, professional investors who operate in the local markets. For example, in Southeast Asia, that would be Climb. In Africa, we're just about to choose the party that we'll back. In India, that'll be a 2024 event. And in the Caribbean, we'll do it sometime in the first half of this year. So we choose a local private sector investment professional. They invest. They have a mandate. Just focus on the thing that has been the most difficult to succeed at in the developing world, from my point of view, related to climate, which is early stage equity. Equity. That's what drives the world. Not debt. Equity. At least on these projects, you need the equity. And then the debt can follow if you give it enough equity. I'm not minimizing debt. I'm trying to focus on the thing that's the biggest problem. The biggest problem is equity. If you try to buy a house and you don't have the down payment, you don't have the what? You don't have the equity, okay? Therefore, you don't get the house. And that's true throughout the developing world as well. We need to figure out a way to get at that. In the United States, we're doing the IRA right now. What is that? That's taking trillions of dollars of tax-subsidized capital, even in the richest market in the world, from a capital market point of view, because you need that to accelerate. How can we expect the Global South to be doing this acceleration of capital investing without those capital markets and without that opportunity? That's why we need to identify that as a way to emphasize our ability to help those markets grow. Some people think about first loss capital, some people think about it as being willing to just accept risk. They think about it as, okay, I've got an appetite for risk. I think that's got to be true. But the other aspect of it is that they have an acceptance of responsibility. We have to think about what is our responsibility. Anyway, it's great to partner with first-rate people. All of them are identified on this page. Ravi is one of them, from the government of Singapore, and Temasek, a strategic partner, like the world's best for Southeast Asia, from my point of view. So we're proud to be working with each of them. Thank you for your time tonight. Have a great evening. Enjoy dinner.
Thank you so much, dear guest and fellow business leaders. I'm really glad that I'm the last speaker because we already lost our moderator. And whom can tell his kids when you come home? I have been the guy who closed the day 2 panel on blended finance of COP28. So this is actually, I have to thank you for you guys going first. But on a more serious note, look, today I'm really here, give you an example, together with Michael, the CEO of the FMO here in the Dutch Entrepreneurial Development Bank. I'm glad that you're here, Michael, and being such a fantastic partner, that we said, look, it's always a challenge how you get private sectors, public sectors together, and you have heard a lot today about COP21, but also in COP27 there have been a lot of pledges from the public side investing into these climate challenges we are facing. However, if you ask me to be very, very frank, there was little outcome. And this is not meant disrespectful, it's really partially based on the fact that a lot of the countries where you want to invest, they are below investment grade, so that makes it for the very, very public sector here and there quite challenging. However, I would also say on the other hand, they encounter limited access of these emerging markets, frontier countries, to public markets. This is really the biggest challenge which we need to overcome, and I think we did find with blended finance a perfect solution where you really bring the best together from two worlds, private and publicly, and this is exactly the tool we use, which I'm going to present to you. We are really especially proud, Michael and I, to announce today that through the blended finance model, Allianz Global Investors, together with the FMO and the John D. and Catherine MacArthur Foundation, we were able to successfully mobilize 1.1 billion US dollars of investor capital for a sustainable development goal loan fund to advance the sustainable development goals in emerging and frontier markets. Importantly for you is maybe that $1 billion US really come from the public, from these commitments from the private sector. This structure is really enabling us with a lot of loans, I would say 120 loans, and these loans will especially support the three sectors in energy, financial institution, and agribusiness. And I'm glad that we have the FMO as a partner, because when you look at the stats, this is giving you a kind of a guess, right, what it means, how impactful that fund will be. So based on the experience of the FMO, close to 60,000 new jobs will be established. This also means, on top, we will save 450,000 tons of CO2. And there you can see, with 1.1 billion, such a huge impact is clearly a fascinating point from our end. So let me really summarize that. Firstly, this fund is a private sector initiated one. It's really unusual, and as more often the public sector drives these initiatives. But secondly, let me just quickly talk about the efficiency of this initiative, because that was a kind of a catalytical capital we got from the MacArthur Foundation, but also from Michael and the team. And normally you see ratios 1:9, which are rather 1:3, 1:4 in the sector. So from a pure productivity perspective, we are doubling down on this. And also with the 25 million guarantee unlocks, this is a capital structure in achieving a ratio of 44:1, which is also 10 times better than what you normally see in the market. And thirdly, I truly believe this is not only a climate positive fund, we call it Climate Plus, because it also means that we have impact on societies, as we do not only meet the target climate, but also have impact on social and financial impact investments. So let me conclude. I truly believe that you feel inspired, that this is maybe a blueprint for all of us. And if you just imagine, I was wondering if I get an earlier slot, because the room was full with 1,000 attendees. So if everybody would have raised €1 million and we multiply it by 10, I truly, truly believe we can have severe impact on the challenges we are facing. Again, let me thank you, all of you, and also I think, Ravi, on behalf of you, and Mark already left today. So look, everybody is disappearing, so you are allowed to disappear as well for whatever your plans are. I wish you all the best, and a big, big thank you for your patience.
Okay, guys, thank you so much, everybody. What a day. What a day. You are the survivors. Huge respect. As we conclude, though, let us all remember once more that that time for action you've heard so much is now. That time to be united. Because ultimately, as all of you know, it's about ensuring that all the beauty, all those breathtaking things that we love about nature, love about our planet, are still there for our children and our grandchildren one day still to wonder at. So well done today. Rest up. God bless. We'll see everyone in the morning. Bright and early, ready to go. Come on. Well done. Give yourself a round of applause.
Вынуждены покинуть свои места проживания